one very small thing changes your life completely.
That's why I deliberately wanted to start with him.
I mean, a big guy in the way person. I said, okay, I don't want to be a judge now.
So we're not talking about Alif.
It was the best choice.
From what you told me, very detailed memory.
I said to Abdullo, listen, Abdullo, if you want to establish a bank and you want to not put your own funds, you want purely the funds of investors, it will take a lot of time for you to establish a bank. It might take 1 year, 2 years.
Good afternoon, dear friends. As you saw earlier, we visited Alif. We are actually in Alif office right now. I decided to record more of a personal one-to-one stories of each of the co-founders. So I would like to start with Firdavs. Firdavs is less known, less public in comparison to Zuhur, who is really colorful person. You will see him now. And Abdullo, who is a really inspirational leader, I would say visionary. Firdavs is usually quiet. Firdavs doesn't like to show himself too much. And that's why I deliberately wanted to start with him, because his story is more interesting as it's less spoken about. Just for you, Firdavs, to give you an overview of the format, how we will hold this interview. First of all, I'm not a journalist. I'm not a professional journalist, as you know. I'm in another business. I'm in a tech business, like yourself. And for me, these videos, first of all, they are like my hobby. And the idea of the conversation is to get to know you and to get to know your personal story. So we're not talking about Alif. It's not a press conference or an interview about the company or your role within the company. It's rather more about your personal story, because stories, they inspire others, and they stay as an achievement or as a path that you went through. And that's why for us, we have this time in order to understand more, and there is no any particular format or set of questions that I prepared, because it has to go natural with the flow. So any story, as you know, starts with a childhood. So maybe you can tell me more about your childhood.
Okay, thank you very much for the invitation. You have mentioned that I do not want to be public, and now I'm having an interview with you, and this, does not coincide with each other.
Yeah.
Basically, we had long discussions about whether I would give the interview or not. But Zuhur and Abdullo tried to persuade me very hard to give at least the first interview, being in Alif for the last 7 years.
So it's the first one now?
Yeah, it's basically the first one that I give as a, let's say, co-founder of Alif. This is the first interview. I would not now take a lot of time saying what I think, but still different thoughts are right now going in my head with regard to whether I want it or not. But since I promised Zuhur and Abdullo to shoot at least one video, being like...
it's not that scary, as you see.
No. In terms of my childhood, when my parents graduated from the medical university, as a young specialist, they decided to go to Rogun town. Back then in 85, 86, it was one of, the city, the town built for the people who construct the HPP Rogun. Yeah. And I was basically born near that place. And the first years, I do remember I went to kindergarten in Rogun, and most of the population of that town, they were basically Russians and no Tajiks. So the first language that I started to speak was Russian, and maybe that has some impact on my life. And even now, I guess I think mostly in Russian, although I went to Tajik school, graduated from Tajik State National University Faculty of Law, studying, in Tajik, but nevertheless, this still appears, reflects in how you think and in which language you think. That was 93, and we lived in one apartment all together in, the place in Dushanbe, Sakhawat. And that is another story. The neighborhood of Sakhawat back then was a very dangerous place. Why? Because back then we did not have the markets Korwan, Sultani Kabir. The biggest market was Sakhawat, and all the people who somehow have connections to criminal groups were all around there. In that area. So I do remember that it was very usual to see armed people working on the streets back then, and we just go to school and they're around there in the market. So that was a kind of neighborhood I grew up. And then in 93, I started to go to school number 5. It's again very close to between Sakhawat and Korvan. It was a very tough period of my life, because the guy came from Pamir, and apparently I had the accent. Obviously, I now don't have
an outsider.
Yeah, like an outsider, and every day I was like, almost every day I had a fight, You beat someone today, the next day.
You're a big guy, so I think...
Back then I was not a big guy. But that's a very interesting story about my life that taught me a lot, basically. It helped me to strengthen my will, You have to have the guts, and the strength of the will is very important. So obviously it's not the best way to strengthen your will, but I was in that situation that I think there was no any way for me to back up.
Yeah.
Why was that? Because we lived again together with my aunt. I had a sister who was younger than me only for a year. I had my cousin, the son of my aunt. He was younger for a year. Yeah. So they looked at me as a person who should stand not only for himself, but for themselves as well. So that was the situation when you do not have any option to back up.
And your father, he was working in Dushanbe?
My father came actually later a bit. I do remember that we had very difficult time finding, back then it was very difficult to find bread, actually. Yeah. My aunt worked in the milk combinat that we have in Dushanbe. And we had a lot of milk products in terms of, but we had difficulties of finding bread, and that was not only us. And I do remember that early in the mornings, like 2-3 o'clock in the morning, we went to a very Soviet stylish, store, and take a line in order to get a bread which was brought by 1 or 2 cars. It usually came when summertime, maybe 5 o'clock. So if you come a bit...
So you were in the queue?
Yeah, you were in the queue, because if you come like...
You went there by yourself? Or?
No. I went there with sometimes with my mom, sometimes with my aunt. So if you just go there at 5, you will be at the end of the queue, and you will not get the bread.
From what you told me, very detailed memory. I can tell you that you are the lawyer. Yeah. Because whatever you told me is like in exact detail. You remember from kindergarten.
Yeah, I remember much more. I tried to make it general, to not take much of your time.
No, it's not the time. It's interesting. But it's interesting the way you approach it, like the level of detail and everything is very... And so you came back to Dushanbe, school.
School number 5, yes.
Tough times.
Tough times. Fighting every day with neighbors, with classmates. Then the year ended, and my parents bought an apartment in the that district called 46, 46 district of Dushanbe city. And we moved to that place. Now our family lived like separately from my aunt. And then the lucky thing, I got lucky, I guess, because in that neighborhood we had a very good school, like Russian Tajik Gymnasium number 74. And it was very known. It was a very good school, and I have a good memories of that school. And it,
no more fights.
No more fights. No more fights. There were situations like this, but our class was very competitive, and we started to compete. I mean, compete in terms of.
You were the leader in the class?
Difficult to say the leader. When you have a class of decent people and one leader, you will have one leader. When you have a class of like 5 leaders, it will be very difficult to point only one leader. So I got lucky that I had in a class which has several very bright and talented people who are very good leaders. And we had really good relations between ourselves. But I was the best in math,
Yeah.
That is what I had.
Well, why did you choose law then?
Yeah,
if you were good in math.
That's a very interesting story as well. I was really good at math, and I think that comes from my father. My grandfather from my father's side was actually a math teacher.
Oh.
So maybe, I don't know.
Yeah.
that is
genetical memory.
Yeah, that is the reason why I was good at math. But when I didn't graduate the school number 74 because the last year I combined. There was a program called in Russian externat.
Yeah, you finished earlier. Yeah, I did the same.
You finished early, and I finished basically the presidential school. The last 3 months I studied there. Again,
it was which year?
It was 2002.
2002, okay.
Yeah, I graduated in 2002. And
then you decided to... when you were choosing a profession?
When I was choosing a profession, it was very difficult to decide. I said, okay, I'm good in math, but what can I do with this knowledge? And back then, I guess my...
you didn't think about Alif.
Yeah, obviously, I didn't think about Alif. It was
fintech.
Fintech and etc. I thought, okay, I'm good in the math, but how can I use it? How can I grow in it? And I didn't. Back then, again, I was short-sighted and didn't see any huge potential for that. Then I said that, okay, I will be a lawyer because it's,
Everyone was going to study law. Either law or economy, I remember.
Yeah.
There were 2 professions.
And the thing is that all the people that you hang out around will have some influence on you. All those leaders that I talked about, they were all going to law school. So I said, okay, then the friends are going to law school, then I want to go to law school.
So you went with the flow?
Yeah, and I wanted to become a judge, actually. I said, okay, I would like to be a judge. So that's why I passed the exam and became a student of the law faculty of the Tajik State National University.
And then you went to the US at some point, as far as I know.
Yes. Then how it happened is that basically we had to study 5 years. And after the second year at the law school, law faculty, I then, drastically shifted my thoughts about what I will do in life. I said, okay, I don't want to be a judge now. But what can I do? And to change my career, I cannot just leave the school.
Yeah.
It's not the best way to do. My parents would be absolutely, disappointed with this decision. And I have studied very well. Graduated with honor. So have never thought about leaving the school. But I said, okay, now I see that I like I want to be an entrepreneur because I wanted to be, the most valuable thing that a mankind can have is a freedom. That's the very important thing for me. Two things, yes, freedom and independence. So I said, when I will be a judge, most likely I will not have that freedom that I would like to have, too formal, everything. And then I shifted and I said, okay, now I'm a lawyer and I like a freedom, so the best profession might be to be an attorney. I decided to go to US. One of my cousins were in US and she said that you have to come. And then, the US Embassy in 2007, it was just opened its doors. I guess it's opened either in 2006 or 2007 and then started to give visas here in Dushanbe. So I had decent knowledge of English. And I applied for a course to study. English course, went to the embassy. I was lucky that the visa was granted. I got the F1 visa. And in 2007, in December, I went to US to study English, New York. 1 year, I was almost 1 year. I have studied just English courses in New York, worked myself to pay my rent. And,
where did you work?
Different places, I used to work for a moving company, just to move things. That's the thing that seemed to me a very... I work for a man, I tried to be how we call it, waitress, but a big guy in the waitress. It was very difficult. If you tell me what is the job that you hate the most, I would say maybe waitress. Because
why? Because you need to serve, or
not because you need to serve. It seems to me that such a big and strong guy, you can do
for
something.
You personally,
for me personally. So I said I would rather do some tougher job and which pays maybe less, but I feel like that is the job that the man does. Moving the furniture, etc., helping people to move out and in. So that different places. But that year taught me a lot in terms of living alone, because up to that date,
how old you are?
Well, 2007, I was 20 years old, 21. So then, again, I did not have intentions to stay in US because that is the way I was raised, to stay closer to family. And then
your father, mother, they were back here.
Yeah, back here.
You needed to come back. And was the first time you made your money there, or?
Basically, yes, because like the money that I get for working state investment committee, they were very
you don't count.
113 so money, as if I remember it correctly.
Yeah, makes sense. So then you came back.
I came back, started, again, my father said that, okay, now you came back, what you want to do with your career, where do you want to work? Then we have considered several options. I said, no, I like the freedom. The only way I can, the only option that I can consider right now is to become an attorney. Then I applied. The system was a bit different back then. Now it's a bit different. So what you will do is, in order to become an independent attorney, you have to go through internship for 6 months with an attorney. So that's what I did. I passed the exam, got the. We don't have the word license for attorney, but let's call it. The license. But then I got an offer from a company that was doing the oil and gas exploration in Tajikistan. If you heard about this, Tethys,
I know.
Petroleum Corporation. So they offered me
It's a Canadian company, right?
yeah, it was a Canadian company. It was the first company that executed a production sharing agreement with the government of Tajikistan. And it did its exploration works under this contract. So I got an offer from that company, and I liked it very much because that was something of interest to me, a big company doing the oil and gas exploration in Tajikistan. No one does this. They have huge plans, and working under the direct supervision of an English lawyer. So I learned quite a lot from that work. I got the offer in August 2009, but unfortunately my father passed away on September 4th, 2009. So it was like after a month that I got the job in that place. And then, that one thing changes your life completely. That was the thing,
You have to grow up.
You have to grow up. You are their eldest son, and everything changes. Everything changes in your mind. In my understanding, if you are raised under or brought up under the Eastern culture, then this is the way how it goes, how it should go. So everything changed. There was a very difficult year for our family and for me personally. It was a very tough period of my life. But everything, went the way it went. And looking backwards, the most important thing is that when you look backwards, you ask yourself whether you stayed the way you were and you are not ashamed of any actions you did in that very difficult period of time. And when I ask myself those questions, the answer is thanks Allah that I do not have any, did any actions that I'm today ashamed of.
Yeah. And you were just 21, so...
22.
22
really years old. So
not married yet.
Not married. Well, my father wanted me to marry. I said I'm still too young. I have still a lot of things to do, but it's life, It's unpredictable life. You can never predict what is waiting for you, like in the next 5 minutes.
He got sick, or what happened?
No, he had some issues with his heart, but he did not let my mom or anyone else know about this.
I see.
So it was.
It came as a surprise.
Yeah, unfortunately. So that was, the biggest loss in my life. And this kind of situation that happen in life teach you to reassess, your life and your values. So I guess that helped me to be a very strong person to become. And in the future, in many cases, there were difficult cases in my life. But again, a strong person, those difficulties make you strong, and that help you to make the right decision.
We stop for a minute about the path. Can you tell me how would you describe your character to a third person? Because you keep mentioning strong person, so you see yourself as a strong person from the third side?
Yeah, I don't like to brag, a lot about or boasting about anything, and especially about myself. That's a very difficult question, and I usually abstain from answering to those questions. I guess the right answers to that sort of questions could be given by other people who know you. Otherwise, it seems to me like you are not acting as a modest person. But in terms of the difficult decisions that I had in my life, I think that keeping the strength of the will and being strong helped me to make the right decision. And when I say about the right decision, I'm not saying that you know at the time when you make the right decision it was right or not. Only the time will show you that you made the right decision or not. So I would leave this.
But is it like the strongest feature of your character?
Difficult to say. Strongest.
The main strength of yourself, say. Firdavs Mirzoev stands for.
I guess you can ask those questions to Zulsho and Abdullo. I think the people who know you better from outside can answer better to.
But you know yourself, right?
You know, I know myself. You know.
Now you're 35. So
yes, 35, and you have to be confident. That's
confidence.
Yes, yeah.
So that's the main strongest feature. And what is the weakest?
I mean, the strength will not come without confidence.
True. It's all interconnected.
Yeah.
So, and what is the weakest? Where do you see your weakness?
Stubbornness, maybe. Stubbornness. But again, you Capricorn.
But again, you agreed for the interview, even being stubborn.
Yeah. But again, that I had gave a hard time to Zulsho and Abdullo before talking.
Some people are even more stubborn than you. Sure, makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, it's due to high respect that I have to Abdullo and Zulsho. So I said.
Okay, so you were 22, started working in Texas. How many years you worked there?
I worked there only for a year. What happened is that in 2009, somewhere in December or maybe January 2010, a fellowship program was announced, like legal education and development. That program was supported by American Bar Association and IREX. And under that program we had, I mean, the ones who get the fellowship would have the opportunity to do their masters at law in US. So I was, I mean, simply I guess lucky to pass all the tests and got the fellowship. Two of us actually that year got the fellowship stipend, and I was accepted by the St. Louis University School of Law.
Okay, you spent 2 years there, right?
No, it was 1 year.
1 year.
1 year for like in US you have the JD program. It's 3 years for anyone who wants to become a lawyer. I guess in US they have to first do undergraduate major, and only then they could apply for a JD. But in our case, we are allowed to do only 1 year and to get the master's degree. But the difference is that we are not allowed to sit the bar.
And you don't need to, because you were supposed to come back here.
Except for, as long as I remember, except for 2 states, like the New York state and California state, the biggest states, they allow a person who has a master degree to sit the bar and pass the exams and get the license. But again, I did not have the intentions to stay there.
Because your mother were here, you were supposed to get married.
A lot of,
a lot of things to do here.
A lot of things to do here. And then, again, I have quite a good memories of the management of Tethys because they didn't want me to leave. They, treated me very well. They raised the salaries twice, 3 times, and you stay with us, and we will later on pay for this type of program. It was a difficult decision to make, you know.
You had salary and no confidence whether they will take you back.
Back then, very huge salary for a person who is 22 years old.
True.
And then you have all that to decide which one you choose. I said, okay.
Was it the right choice?
It was the best choice in terms of my career and how life went after that.
So you came back, you went back to Tethys?
No. I went there, studied, and then I said that now it's time for me to establish my law firm, and which would serve international financial institution, foreign companies that do business in Tajikistan or want to invest in Tajikistan.
So you were 23, 24, and you started your own law firm.
2011, it was 24.
24.
Yeah, 24.
Well done.
Then I...
so you had courage to just go independently back in the time?
Yeah. I mean, you have to be courageous. I mean, courage is very important. And again, it comes with the confidence. You have to act.
Yeah.
So then
after those early years of fighting, I think you got a lot of it. So.
Yeah, I mean, those, again, you have to look at it all together. So you cannot separate, it's the life that goes, the ups and downs.
Just to, on a separate side question about religion, what was your attitude towards religion since your childhood? Did it evolve? Was there any point where you felt that you're close to that, or?
Very difficult question about religion, because it's something personal, and for me, keeping the personal things out of public.
I remember that.
Yeah, that's very important. But for me, religion is, it's either you believe in it or not.
Mm-hmm. And your family, was it religious? Because in the family of doctors, I think they were not.
Not. My father was quite religious.
He was?
Yeah.
Okay.
He prayed 5 times a day.
Okay.
So it was.
So he was an example for you.
Yeah, I did not get any formal religious education, and that is one of the weaknesses that I have, and I hope that I will find time.
So you would have wanted to do it?
Madrasa? Not back then, but maybe now I want to get more knowledge of the, Islam, the religion, to better understand it. And without having a formal education, that's very difficult. But in terms of belief, you either have it or not. I mean, that's the thing,
The reason I raised that is because when we were talking about confidence and courage, I guess part of it is coming from this, because when you believe, you have more confidence.
Yeah, that's the belief part. I mean, you have, maybe I do not show it in a way to be religious, but in terms of belief, that's very important. Either you have it or not.
So you started your business, 22 years old.
No, I started not alone. I did start with my partner, Rustam Nazrisho, who is a Tajik, and who is an attorney in New York. He has his own law firm, Nazrisho and Associates in New York. Quite very talented and bright, great person. So when the second time when I was in New York, I started to think about that, who I will partner with to open a law firm in Tajikistan. Because, if you open by your own, you would not have that comfort of big companies knocking your door, because you are 24 years old.
I mean, you needed some.
So I said that there should be something that could attract those people, at least to send you an email, an inquiry email, So I knew Akay Rustam from the first year that I went to.
From your first trip.
Yeah. So I got in touch with him, explained to him my plan. So he was very supportive. He said, let's do that. I mean, we have to do that. And we started thinking of opening a law firm here.
And how did it go?
Yeah, in 2011, in September, I even remember the date, September 1st, 2011, I came back to Dushanbe. In October 13, we have registered the company, Nazrisho and Mirzoev Law Firm. So in late October or early November, Akay Rustam came, and we started to meet with people to present our law firm to people, to those clients that, potential people that we knew that their firms would be our clients. It went well. Obviously, the first 3 months I didn't have any,
no income?
Not even income, no any inquiry letter.
I see.
So it was a very disappointing time, but I have spent my time studying, refreshing my understanding of Tajik
Tajik law.
Yeah,
because you studied.
For 1 year I was not here, the practice. And then we started to get clients, and the Nazrisho and Mirzoev law firm is still active. Another
But
person.
you had to step back, yeah?
Currently, I'm still a partner. I advise on some major legal projects, and let's say consult the guy who is.
And how big is the company now?
The company is not big, and I will tell you why. In realities of Tajikistan, it could not be big because the economy is not that big, and the foreign direct investment and foreign investment is relatively very low. So what you basically do is you get one big project and
work. It's project based.
Yeah, it's project based, and you work on it for 3, 6 months, 9 months. So you do not need a.
And how did you get married? Because you started your business, then
all happened in 2011.
Everything in 1 year.
Happened, in 1 year. So what happened? I came September 1st. I said, okay, now I have to establish. 2 goals that for this year that I have to accomplish: to establish a law firm and to get married. So.
And you had 3 months because it's September.
Yeah.
So you had 3 months to do both.
Yeah, absolutely, to do both. Then I, got from all the family members information about different girls, to talk to. I met with several of them and decided that one is better for me. And the situation was she was my wife. She's the second daughter in her family. There are 3 girls, and neither of them were married. The youngest were a schoolgirl. And then I said to them that to my wife that we have to marry by the end of this year. Okay, should not leave it to 2012. If we decided, we have to move fast. The tradition, you have to send your parents to their house to discuss all those things, and they went. I do not remember the time when I sent my parents to her parents' house, but it was either early December or end of November. And we said that the wedding date should be December 25th. So
this quickly,
so they were like, okay, it's first we have an issue here. This is the second girl. Our second daughter, we have the older daughter, we have to think, etc. But hopefully everything went well. And on December 25th, we had the wedding, 2011, cool. Yes.
So when you want something, you just push it to make it happen?
Yeah, that's...
Okay, and with Abdullo, you met 2014?
No, 2011, I got married, and 2012, a couple of months later on, Abdullo came, he told the story.
Yeah, he told us downstairs. He
told the story. And we met with him in 2012. It was springtime. We had a lunch together. That was the first
due diligence moment.
Yeah, due diligence moment, asking him different questions, and in order to say the family he's a good guy. Okay,
Yeah, so because you were the oldest and the man responsible for that family, for your sister.
Yeah.
So you needed to make that decision, basically.
Yes. And then we met with Abdullo, had a lunch, went back home, said, he's a good guy.
He went through the due diligence.
Yeah, he went through the diligence, passed the due diligence, and they had the wedding in June or July. I do not know the exact date, but 6-7 months after.
Yeah, 2012.
My wedding.
Makes sense. And then, basically, after that, Alif idea came in 2013.
There was a conference on Islamic finance. Do you know the presidential place in Warsaw, Pugus?
Yeah.
I was invited there as a as a lawyer. Abdullo was there. We didn't know that we will go.
Abdullo was there in what capacity?
Yeah, we went there. We said, sit, and we started. What are you doing here, etc., etc. And then Abdullo said that I have a confidential information to share with you. I said, okay, what's that? He said that I have a project that I want to show to representatives of Islamic Development Bank for them maybe to invest. And he opened that all the files that he had, explained me.
You were the first person he showed it to, or?
I think another person was also involved in, do not know to what level, was involved in preparation of those projections and budgets, etc., etc. But he said that, would you please present this together with me to Islamic Development Bank? I said, okay, I have no idea what's that. It's only like 30 minutes that we are talking, but I can support you if there would be any legal questions. In terms of your financials, I have no idea what is in there. Like within 20, 30 minutes, you will not get any, the understanding of it. We went there and they asked several questions. We presented. Abdullo did all the job. There was, I do not remember whether there were any legal questions or not, but maybe not. I do not remember that. Then we came out of that conference, and after a couple of days, he said that I need an attorney, a good attorney, who would help me with drafting all the legal documents to establish an Islamic bank in Tajikistan. And he asked me who would I recommend, and he wanted a person to do it on a success fee basis. I said that, well, it will be very difficult to find a good lawyer who would work on success fee in Tajikistan. You can find a person who will be doing that on success fee basis, but most likely that would be not a very qualified or good attorney. So I said, I can help you with drafting some legal documents. I have time. And he was like asking my sister how much he's charging hourly, etc. I said, Abdullo, don't think about this. I'm not going to send you any
invoice.
Invoice or bill for that. But if you will have an investor who will join, I will send a bill to your investor. I said, okay, no problems. So then we started to meet with him oftenly to discuss different things, strategies about Islamic finance, about our current legislation, whether it's possible or not. Many meetings with Abdullo and the other person. I do not have, the permission of him to disclose his name, so I would just the third.
I think it's not a big secret though, but let Abdullo tell that story.
Yeah, let Abdullo tell that story.
That's fine.
So then, at some point, I said to Abdullo, listen, Abdullo, if you want to establish a bank and you want to not put your own funds, you want purely the funds of investors, it will take a lot of time for you to establish a bank. It might take 1 year, 2 years. So why don't we open a small microcredit organization? I would invest.
You had money back then?
No, I didn't have money. I didn't have money. I had an apartment which we bought for my sister, and she did not use it. I said, I'm going to sell this.
Because she lived with Abdullo.
Yeah. I said, I'm going to sell this, add some additional funds that I have earned from my law firm, and we will make it. So then he was, I do remember his eyes. They were at that moment shining, like.
He got excited.
Yeah, he was like
someone
excited.
believed.
Someone believed in my idea, and I basically was the first.
You were the first investor.
Investor, and then we started to thinking about how much money you have, how much money I have. Let's combine them. Let's see whether it's enough for the minimum capital, etc., etc. And then we, started. Then we invited the third person. And we together established the microcredit organization, Alif Capital. We got the registration on
April 14?
No, January 2nd, 2014.
Okay.
All the preparation was done like the second half of 2013. And then the license we got in April.
Yeah, I remember.
We started our operations in April.
Just last few questions left. wanted to ask you about Abdullo, because you know him obviously quite well. You've been working for a while. What do you think is the strongest feature of his character which you admire and you think is one of the main success elements of this business?
Abdullo has a lot of strengths. First of all, it's obviously, I do admire his modesty. Very modest person, down-to-earth person. And then very good and even best soft skills in terms of relations management. That's very important for a manager to have.
Mm-hmm.
And then the ability to see the right direction that we have to
be the visionary.
Yeah,
basically.
to be the visionary. Those are one of the very least, And
So you can't list one. It's just a
big
number of features.
You can't list one.
Okay.
Although being a very soft person, he is a very strong person.
Yeah.
In terms of different pressures, and he is able to manage to again make the right decision under the pressure.
Yeah.
A complex of the skills and knowledges that he has.
Mm-hmm. So the last question I have, basically this year, as you may have heard, 2021, we have 10 years anniversary of Peshaft.
Yeah.
And what I'm trying to do with these interviews and everything is for each of my guests to give one advice to the youth of Tajikistan or young people like yourselves who are fighting in school now.
Yeah.
What main thing to follow in their life and how to choose the right path, the right career in their life? Can you advise on that?
Difficult to say. What worked for myself, I would say what worked for myself is try to do what you enjoy in life. That's the most important thing. There would be difficult things, and do you know the notes of Albert Einstein? And in one of the notes he has a very good quote. Where there is a will, there is a way.
True.
So that's very important thing. And
so you had the will to start your business, there was a way.
Yeah. It would be difficult. Life is very difficult. You have book smarts and street smarts.
Yeah.
You have to be both in order to be
True.
successful.
True.
Like being a book smart, you will read, you will have the knowledge.
Yeah.
But in order to be successful in life, you have to also have the skills to put the knowledge into the practice.
True.
So just that's the thing. Where there is a will, there is a way.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Firdavs.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time. I appreciate it.